Wake up, 49ers fans. It is good to have you again. Thank you for choosing Damon Bruce and Larry Krueger and 49ers Wake Up. Larry, oh my goodness. The weekend that everybody circled as soon as the regular season schedule came out is finally here. I am ready to go, man. How are you?
Doing great. Can't wait. We are 2 days away from a game that we have waited a long time to see because we wanted to see Niners Eagles last year. We got robbed of it. Any way you slice it, it wasn't what we were hoping it would be last time around. And we're going to see it this time. And I'm excited to see it. And I feel good about the 49ers' chances.
Look, there's no greater X factor to change what could be the possible outcome of a game than having a quarterback who is basically statistically leading the league in all important categories playing in that game. And that quarterback is Brock Purdy. The story is it's an unbelievable story, which can either see its momentum slow down should they go to Philadelphia and not have the afternoon that they hope for. But Larry, looking at the other side of that coin, I mean, this is the weekend where Brock Purdy can absolutely become a household name if he isn't one already. I think that the path to beat the Eagles comes directly off of his right arm. I mean, this is a team that can be had in its secondary. I think you and I both agree that Darius Slay is an absolute stud. Everyone else is up for grabs in that secondary. I know that a lot of the conversations that you've had with some folks inside the Eagles and in Philadelphia have told you that, safeties are a little slow, linebackers are a little slow in pass coverage. And this just sounds to me like the problem spot for the Eagles that Kyle Shanahan has had 3 extra days to come up with different ways to frustrate them. They're 29th in passing yards allowed, 31st in passing touchdowns allowed. This is a huge stage for Brock Purdy and a huge opportunity to show a world that still has its doubters exactly who he is and what he can do.
He could emerge out of this weekend as the favorite for the MVP if he plays well enough and if the 49ers can secure that victory on the road. The big question for me is, who are we going to see in this game? I was looking at the injury report. Typically, the guys who don't practice on Thursday, at least as far as the 49ers are concerned, typically don't play. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, but for example, the Eagles yesterday took the field for practice. There was no Fletcher Cox. There was no Dallas Goedert, and there was no Zach Cunningham. And there's a lot of talk, and Milton Williams is battling the concussion. Lane Johnson is not 100% either. So if you take away Cunningham and Cox from their run D, I think you lose their number 1 and number 2 run defenders in their front 7. So does it change the game plan? Does it make it more of a run-heavy plan? Do the Niners try to focus more on just pounding CMC, who might be the MVP at this minute, at the Eagles defense? I mean, that's a big one. And we got great matchups all over the field as well. I mean, James Bradbury and Deebo Samuel is going to be really, really good. Those guys, everybody's jawing. And, you look at those numbers that you mentioned, the Eagles are bottom tier when it comes to pass defense. I mean, they're 19th in total defense. They're 29th in pass defense. So, to me, the one area of the field where the 49ers have a clear advantage is the middle. They don't have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson anymore. They picked up Kevin Byard. Byard is a tremendous player, but, the 49ers really live in the middle of that field, whether it be with Kittle, Ayuk, CMC, Deebo, Juwan Jennings. I mean, they live in the intermediate middle. And I think that's where the Eagles are ripe for the picking. So can the Niners, it's all theoretical till you get out there on the field, with the wind howling and the fans going crazy and, whatever weather. It's supposed to be going to be in the 50s. So the weather, the interesting little revelation of yesterday, I thought, Damon, was Brock Purdy telling us that if it rains a little, he won't wear a glove, but if it rains a lot, he may put on a glove, and he's done it before at Iowa State. So we may see Purdy throwing the ball, a wet ball, but with a glove. We'll see.
Will he go double gloves or just glove on the throwing hand? We going full Michael Jackson?
I think it could be just glove on the throwing hand for better grip.
Something to keep an eye on. I was like you, Larry, coming up with different ways to talk about this game all week long. And I think maybe the single biggest one-on-one matchup, because if this matchup can be gobbled up one-on-one, it springs George Kittle. It springs Kyle Juszczyk. It springs Colton McKivitz and Hassan Reddick. If Colton McKivitz can handle Hassan Reddick, then you don't have Kittle there. You don't have Juszczyk there having to double team, keep an eye on this incredibly destructive pass rusher. And if McKivitz can really handle that job, now all of a sudden you got 3 guys out in that pattern, which is something that we were talking about a few weeks ago. And George Kittle and Juszczyk taking advantage of slower, harder to defend is in terms of pass defenders, linebackers and safeties. I mean, that's where an awful lot of yardage is. You talk about the middle of the field. I mean, you're telling me Kyle hasn't spent all week long looking for the slowest linebacker and how he can isolate Christian McCaffrey on that linebacker coming out of the backfield. This is the tic-tac-toe that Kyle's been playing all week long. All week long, he is looking for that one play, that one matchup that's an 8-yard slant to the wrong guy, and then all of a sudden it is goodbye. And this is the chess game that we're going to watch unfold this Sunday. It is the final final month of the year. It's the final stretch of the year. It begins with the final billing game of the year. And look, give the Eagles an awful lot of credit. They've been in the game of the year like 2 or 3 different times this year. They are, as you and I talked about, a little bit beat up, reflected in their practice report, reflected in those defensive snap counts over the last couple of weeks. They certainly do take their toll. This is a sport that taxes bodies, and I think the Eagles have been paying an awful lot of that tax. So it feels like, if you could set up the scenario for this game to go and be played under, the Niners would dial up an awful lot of what has happened here coming into this game. And the question will be now, will they take advantage of it?
It's amazing to me how the spread to me is amazing. The Niners -3. It's amazing to me the number of people that don't feel like this is going to be a particularly close game, and they feel like the Niners are going to wind up winning big. I guess I just can't allow myself to think like that, just because I've got great respect for the run that Philly's on and how much talent they have. But to me, these are undoubtedly the 2 best teams in the conference. And I've been pointing to this game since the schedule came out. I mean, really, I mean, it's the 49ers feel like they have some unfinished business. And I wasn't sure which games, we were going through the schedule at the beginning of the year, which games the Niners would show up for, which games they wouldn't. Is this a win? Is that a loss? It's always hard to do. When the schedule comes out in May, it's equally hard to do in July and training camp. You do it again at the beginning of the regular season and you start to kind of project. But the one thing I've projected all year is that the 49ers are going to show up for this game in Philadelphia. And just from being in the locker room this week, they're loose.
Well, that's
they're loose.
What I asked you. You've been around the team. You can get the sense of, a team that's feeling pressure. You get the sense of a team that's feeling loose and confident in itself. And that's what you picked up, huh?
Very loose team. I wouldn't call it cockiness. They know the task that they have in front of them. They know how good Philadelphia is. They know what a tough place that is to play. They got nothing but respect for their opponent here, but they're not walking into this thing going, "Oh, shucks, I don't know." They think they're pretty good. Ambry Thomas said, "Hey, we got a lot of good players in this room." So there's a lot of individual matchups that I think we'll get into this morning that I think are going to be really Very interesting and worth discussing. But, like, for example, last week, Mooney Ward traveled from side to side wherever DK Metcalf went on Thanksgiving night. Mooney followed, but Steve Wilks wouldn't commit to whether or not that would be the plan this week against A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is a far better receiver than DK Metcalf. They both played at Ole Miss, by the way, and they played on the same teams. But A.J. Brown was the star.
By the way, don't tell that to DK Metcalf last night, who in a losing effort for Seattle had about as good of a football game as a wide receiver can have. My God, he was awesome last night.
Yeah, and he isn't. Physically, he's as bad. He's big and bad, and there's no question. But Mooney Ward, is almost the perfect. Ward has a lot of confidence, let's just say, against Metcalf. And the 49ers feel like, he dominates Metcalf, so he travels with Metcalf. Now, I don't know if they're going to do the same thing this week with A.J. Brown, or if they'll just play aside. I do know that Ambry Thomas went up against Devontae Smith in a bowl game when Michigan played Alabama, and I said, "How'd you do against him?" He said, "I did well. I did well against him," and so I think Ambry's looking forward to that matchup. To me, the one key element in this game is, the Niners have 5 young DBs, right? And Steve Wilks is an excellent defensive backfield coach, but they've got 5 youngsters back there: Diamador Lenore, Ambry Thomas, Jair Brown, Darrell Luter Jr., Samuel Womack III. Those 5 guys are all young players. And I asked Steve, what can you do to coach them up quick? What can you do to get them ready? And he said, we're not necessarily focusing on the stage or, the pressure. We're just focusing on us internally, what we can do as individuals to be better. So I think that's probably the right approach. But Damon, there's no question in my mind that the Niners have their future DBs on this roster here. Lenore, Thomas, Brown are 3 of their 4 starters back there right now. And then Luter and Womack are coming off the bench, and they're just fresh off the PUP for Luter and the IR for Womack. But the level of poise that the Niner young DBs play with in this game against Devontae and A.J. Brown to me is going to be maybe the number one question. Can the Niner youngsters on the back end, Brown's a rookie for crying out loud, and so's Luter, can they, and Ambry has not played very much. Can these guys play with poise down the field with the ball in the air with all the pressure that comes with this game? We're going to find out. It's a big, big game for the young DBs.
By the way, good to see London in the house this morning. How about that? Here for a little vengeance. I like that very much. Thank you so much for being here. Vengeance for the 49ers, maybe vengeance for me and Larry along the way. Everyone here is keeping receipts on what happened and what's going forward. I couldn't help but notice, as you talked about the entirety of the 49ers secondary, Isaiah Oliver's name was totally out of the mix. Do you think that he is now persona non grata in teams' game plans, and the Niners are turning away from him in more moments than they're going to turn back to him?
Well, Steve likes him a lot. I think Steve Wilks, that is, had a lot to do with Oliver being here, but he's clearly, their 3 best corners are Mooney, Lenore, and Ambry. Then the question is Oliver the next man up? And he probably is. But you also have Womack there. You have Luter there. And I think Womack and Luter have better athleticism than Oliver. Oliver's a smarter veteran player. My guess is Oliver's the first guy off the bench, and Luter and Womack are further down the depth chart right now. But yeah, I think Oliver is on a kind of a show me, snap to snap mode, because he did allow 100% completion percentage over a 3-week period there, 3 or 4 week period. And the Niners knew they needed to do better. So this is right when they got Chase Young. They added Young up front. Wilks told us yesterday that he feels that Armstead and Hargrave, got their legs back during the bye week. And I personally, if I have one prediction I'm going to make on this thing, as far as the Niners personnel, I think Hargrave's going to have a huge game. Huge game. I think another guy that's going to have a huge game that I talked to yesterday was Javon Kinlaw. I went up to Kinlaw and I said, hey, man, everybody's talking about that Ambry interception. You bull rushed the hell out of that center on that play. He had a huge smile and he's like, gave me a dap. And he's like, thanks, man. Appreciate it. He had the bull rush of bull rushes last week that led to that Ambry interception. Kinlaw knows what that film looked like when the Niners played the Eagles. He knows what people were saying about him. So I expect Kinlaw to fire. I expect Javon Hargrave to have a phenomenal game. And the Niner defensive front line has looked really good since they added Chase Young.
Just want to say good morning to everyone. It is so good to have you here. Thanks for stopping by. It's 49ers Wake Up. Damon Bruce and Larry Krueger. We're getting you ready for the game of the year in Philadelphia. Some early places to have your eyeballs in this game in terms of early indicators, how the entire day might go. The first thing I'm looking at speaks directly to what you're just talking about with Kinlaw and Hargrave. What kind of pocket is Jalen Hurts looking at? What kind of pocket does he have in that first quarter? Is the Philadelphia offensive line, kind of living up to their reputation as this really good run blocking unit, pass blocking, maybe a little bit less so. And now it's up to Hurts to keep plays alive with his legs. And boy, he is fantastic at that. He really is. But how comfortable is Jalen Hurts in a pocket is one of the first boxes to check I'm going to be looking at. And then beyond that, Larry, when the Eagles have the ball, I don't know if there's going to be a more important down for the 49ers than first down. I think first down is where this game is won or lost for the 49ers defensively. Keeping the Eagles out of third and manageable, fourth and short has to be at the top of Steve Wilks' game plan, because they really are the same way the Yankees used to play 8-inning games, because you had Mariano Rivera, like God's perfect closer, basically waiting for you in the ninth. They were playing 8-inning games. That's an incredible advantage. The Eagles are playing as if fourth and short doesn't even matter or exist. That is an incredible advantage. And the way you stop the brotherly shove, this is something that we've talked about this year, is to avoid the situation that sets up the brotherly shove is coming. And that means staying out of fourth and short, staying out of third and short. And first down is the down of the game, I think, for the 49ers defense. And it's not sexy. It's probably going to be, we all talk about lean in for third down, lean in for fourth down, because these are more important than first or second. Well, not really. Not really, they aren't. One of the reasons why the Niners have been a monster this year is because of how good they've been on first and second down. If you don't see third down, that's a good afternoon for your offense. So I just think that is, as you're looking to settle into your couch and settle into the game, and what do you need to be looking at other than, wide receivers and cornerback matchups and the scoreboard? How's that pocket look for Hurts? And what are the Eagles not doing on first down? I think that's where an awful lot of this game plan has to be.
Yeah, I agree. First and second down for sure. I mean, the key guy, I think, is Nick Bosa. Because Bosa, when he's really going well, can draw penalties on offensive linemen as well as any defensive lineman in football. He puts a ton of pressure on you, and you have to clutch, and you have to grab, and you got to hold, and you got to hook them, and you got to try to cheat as much as you possibly can. We asked Nick this week about the matchups, and he's like, hey, this is a veteran savvy line, and they clutch and grab as well as any team out there. And when he was asked about how do you defend Hurts, he's like, we really have to rush as one. And what he's talking about there is that, the one thing is, to me, the wild card with the Eagles, what makes the Eagles offense really on a different level and one of the most difficult in all of football to defend is you have a running game with DeAndre Swift and Hurts onto some designed runs. They also have Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell. They can run the ball. They got a big physical offensive line. They can run the ball. Then they have two number one receivers, right? And then Goddard, who's probably not going to go in this game, is as good a receiving tight end as there is. He's 6'5" and in his prime. So you've got great weapons. You got a quarterback that can run, and you've got designed runs, and then you've got a running game that's really strong and a strong offensive line. So they check all the boxes. Where they get next level-esque is scrambling. So what Bosa's talking about is whether, they did a great job last week. If you go back and watch that all 22 against Seattle, they shrunk the pocket on Geno. As much as they rushed him, they shrunk the pocket. And almost on every sack, it was like two 49ers coming from different angles, pinching him in there.
Yeah.
They didn't give him a run lane to escape out to. And I think that, to me, is the number one thing in this game on the Niners defensive side of the ball, is they have to rush in lanes, and they have to rush as one, and they cannot give Jalen Hurts an obvious run lane, because no matter what pass play they call, if he holds the ball more than any quarterback in football, that's why he's taken the sacks that he's taken. And that's also why he puts so much pressure on a defense. But he'll drop back to pass. He'll survey the field. He then, because you're playing, TE games and guys are all over the place, if you give him an open run lane, he is very patient and will take it and go on to the next play. So that is the backbreaker. And that's the thing that is so deflating for defensive linemen, is when he scrambles, when everything's covered and the rush is great and he's got nowhere to go with it, and then he scrambles for a first down. And that is what's so deflating. So they have to make sure that they rush as one and keep him hemmed in.
Both these teams are top 10 in total yards, in yards per play, in rushing yards. There is an efficiency that both these teams have played with all year. The 49ers very dramatically showing it to you, maybe more often than the Eagles have, because the Eagles have been in a few more dogfight games. But again, I respect the dog that wins the dogfights. 10-1, whether it be large margin of victory or small margin of victory, is 10-1. And you can't argue with 10-1 on a football field. You can't argue with a team that has yet to lose a game at home. And that's who the Eagles are. So huge week for Kyle Shanahan. Obviously the players decide what's going to happen. But when I think of, what is Kyle's incomplete? Larry, I think you and I have a tremendous amount of respect for who he is, what he does, and even the shortcoming of having not won a Super Bowl is something that you and I have always been able to look beyond to find the actual coach that is there. And I know that there are a bunch of fans that still want him to have that fourth quarter come from behind win that is absent in his resume as 49ers head coach. I can still see beyond that, though. I really do. But this is another one of those, this is a big game. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's not a playoff game, but in a weird way, it's going to affect a path in the playoffs so dramatically, possibly. It almost is. I did a segment this week, said this is the NFL's version of an in-season tournament. The in-season tournament is there to manufacture pretend consequence for disposable early season NBA games. This is a game that has consequence attached to it. And therefore, it's a big game, and therefore, Kyle's going to be under an even harsher microscope. If they lose, then he will be applauded should they win. Because if they win, it's still not the big one. But if they lose, everyone will say, well, it was a big game, and Kyle lost it. I think it's a huge week for Shanahan. And if there were 1 week in the year for one opponent that he could get 3 extra days of prep for, I think he would have chosen this game. I mean, it's set up the best it possibly could be for a game that's not a home game for the Niners, isn't it?
I mean, I think so. I mean, other than the fact it's in Philly.
Right. That's the only thing that doesn't make it the perfect scenario to go win in. You're in a tough environment, but beyond that, this is the perfect setup. It really is. Eagles coming in a little gassed and tired. You got extra rest. Everyone's got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Like you said, the entire locker room knows the magnitude of the game, but is still nice and loose. This team has played better in its 3 weeks. In the 3 victories since the bye, they've been more impressive than the 5 victories before the bye. Like the peak of the Niners season, I think, is happening at the right time to meet this game.
They're rounding into form. It's clear on both sides of the ball. They're also kind of a team that's been there and done it. So, as far as they've gone to Super Bowls, they've gone to Super Bowl, they've gone to NFC Championship games. So they're familiar with, okay, it's now the real season. It's time to play. I just always felt like, teams that are on the on the come up, a young Sacramento Kings team this year in the NFL, the Detroit Lions, those teams play hard early on, trying to kind of define, who they are and kind of change their culture. There's no changing of the Niner culture. It's been established. They're playing for the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying you pace yourself, but you're keenly aware that you can't, that you have to get wins early in the year, but you really have to be peaking towards the end of the year. And I think that's, when you've run the marathon and you've been there at the end of the year and you realize, that it takes your best at the end, I think there's some tendency to let off the gas a little bit, or to, kind of take it as I don't know, maybe you're not quite as fired up in the regular season, but I just think the 49ers know that it's go time now, and they're playing at a really high level. I think they're focused, they're determined, but what is this game really going to determine? It's not going to determine anything, really, because the 49ers still going to have like a 60 or 70% chance of playing the NFC Championship game back in Philadelphia, even if they win this game.
Right.
So I think it's more than anything trying to, serve a message to the Eagles that as good as you guys think you are, we're your equal and then some. And I think the and then some is going to be on the field on full display come Sunday.
When you look at who is trying to come up with the 1 seed and home field throughout and all that, you'd think that sitting at 10-1, you'd be a little bit on easy street, but it's not like that at all for the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles have broken their backs getting to 10-1. I mean, look at some of the wins that they've just put up in this recent streak. They're winning at Arrowhead. They're beating the Bills in an overtime game that was just a slugfest. Now you got the San Francisco 49ers, a team that could make an argument we might be the best team in football. After that, they got a Dallas Cowboys team that is really tough to beat at home and just, played some, maybe not defensively, but offensively kind of out of its mind football when it needed to happen last night. There is a shot that the 49ers with a win here could set up a scenario that has Eagles fans 2-3 weeks from now talking about, well, did we peak too early? Or just, the schedule finally got to us. We were 10-1, and then all of a sudden we were 10-3 because back-to-back losses, Niners and Cowboys. And if that happens, let's go. Let's see if this NFC title game might not make it to Levi's after all. And the Lions are still going to be heard from, Larry. Lions got a little bit of a cush schedule. They lost a game on Thanksgiving they shouldn't have. And that might screw up their game plan to be hosting an NFC title game. But I refuse to believe in Detroit or be worried about Detroit. I would be worried a little bit about the Cowboys and the Eagles if you're the 49ers. And that's it. I mean, those are the 2 teams that I think you really got to worry about come postseason and how it might all shake out. So this is just, we got good football. I mean, that's it. Well, I hope we get a game that matches the resumes that these 2 teams bring in. And if for any reason the 49ers do go in there, live up to the hype that Las Vegas thinks they're going to live up to, and win decisively, the kind of win that's got everybody leading their show with how good the Niners looked on Monday, even shows that don't like the Niners. That's going to be a real sea change in this season. So, look good, feel good, play good. The amount of feel good that would come out of this game for the 49ers if they're able to win it is just another reason why they got to go get it. And I think Kyle knows that. I think Brock knows that. I think the entire team knows that. This is a big one. This is a big one. It's huge. The thing that worries me, Larry, let me ask you this big, broad question. The thing that worries me is that the Eagles, and we've seen it, they can play a bad half and still win a game. I don't know if the 49ers live in that land where they can play a bad half and still win a game in this game. The Eagles, I don't know how they have covered up all of their mistakes with execution when it matters the most or just being a bully when it matters the most. But the Eagles have played poorly and won. The Niners, when they've played poorly this year, have lost all 3 of those games. So do you think the Niners can have a bad first half, be down at halftime, and still win this game? Because I don't either.
No,
I think
they got a fire in both halves. I mean, Philly is in a weird spot. They've been outgained by a combined 339 yards in their past 3 games against Buffalo, Kansas City, and Dallas.
Ooh, hold
all
on,
playoff teams.
I'm going to use that later today. I haven't even seen that. 339 over their last 3.
Outgained by a combined 339 yards past 3 games. And they found ways to win these games. So, they are living right, and they find a way, they find a way. It's to me, that's really one of the interesting angles on this game is just that Philly has been able to win these games even when they're not necessarily playing great football. So they have an ability to turn it on. And at halftime of this last game against Buffalo, Jalen Hurts had 2 turnovers. He had thrown for 33 yards and they just looked dead. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. And they beat Buffalo, and Hurts played almost a perfect second half and overtime. So, Philly is they're really, really good. They're well coached. They have a belief that they're always going to win. And, but to me, the Niners have one area of the field where I think they're going to win this game, and that's the middle of the field. If you look at the numbers, Purdy's leading the NFL in efficiency on intermediate passes. He's averaging 13 yards per attempt on those intermediate passes. The Eagles' biggest defensive deficiency is on those passes in the intermediate level between the hashes, where they've allowed a 95.6 QBR. So I think that plays right into the 49er hands. Just keep doing what you're doing well. Brock Purdy completing passes in the middle of the field. So, I mean, a lot of it's going to come down to, the 49ers rely on yards after the catch. The Eagles defense, despite allowing a huge share of completions over the middle, they have tackled exceptionally well. So they've eliminated the yards after the catch better than all but 2 other NFL teams. So they're third in the NFL at minimizing yards after the catch. The Niners need to bust some big plays after the catch. And if they do, I think this game could be a major advantage 49ers.
Banks, Brindle, Burford versus Jalen Carter. And the middle, the rest of those Eagles in the middle. But man, he is a beast. He's an absolute monster. Teams that passed on him in the name of we don't like where he is, we don't like the status that he's stepping into the NFL with. Teams might have wanted to ignore that because he's special, Larry. He is a beast out there, and he is the reason why, Hargrave became expendable because they knew that they had a very good chance to get this guy due to his falling draft stock, which was all headline based more than talent based, So Jalen Carter is a beast. Are we going to see John Feliciano involved in this game? Is he going to be rotating in for maybe whoever isn't playing well in the moment?
I asked Chris Forster yesterday about this, and he said, I said, Feliciano, is he superior to Burford? And, he didn't want to get into superior because he's trying to build up Burford. He may need Burford.
Right.
Feliciano filled in for Burford last week against Seattle and allowed 4 pressures and 4 hurries and 34 pass blocking snaps. So Forster danced around the question of is Feliciano superior to Burford? But let
me ask you, don't dance around the question. Is he?
Well, I mean, it's the offensive line play is a very difficult thing to evaluate.
Right.
But I would say that he's more dependable because of his veteran experience. And when I asked Forster about it, he said that he's what separates Feliciano from Burford is Feliciano's ability as a pass protector. That he's really good in pass protection and that he's dependable in pass protection. So they like Burford. They feel, like he's got a bright future, but I expect to see Feliciano, who played 66 snaps last week at right guard. I expect he's going to play all the snaps at right guard. That'd be my guess.
All the snaps. Yeah. I think left to right, you're going to see obviously Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, and then Feliciano at right guard and Colton McKivitz at right tackle. So it's, we'll see how it all goes. Feliciano only had a 44.4 PFF grade, which was the lowest of the 49er offensive linemen last week against Seattle, but he's also, dependable. And according to Forster, the strength of his game is pass protection, and he's a veteran, and they're going to lean on Feliciano. You think the Eagles are tired?
I think the Eagles are tired. I think the one thing that's really coming clear is that, it's like when you're on top, it looks like, man, you're going to be there forever. And then all of a sudden you see the frailty of these men and these football teams when they get a little age. Who's banged up right now? Well, you got Goddard, who's coming off a fractured forearm. He said he was going to try to play, but he didn't make practice yesterday. Chances are he's not going to play. And then you've got Lane Johnson, who's got some age on him. Kelsey, who's got some age on him.
Yeah.
You got Fletcher Cox, who's got some age on him, who's, got a groin issue, didn't practice. Zach Cunningham's not old, but he's hurt. So, I think some of, Philly's got a few older players that they lean on. Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey are their veterans. And all those guys are a little bit dinged up, and I just feel like, if you said to me, do you feel better about the Niners winning this game or better about the Niners potentially winning a playoff game in Philly? Well, I feel good about this game, but I actually feel better about the Niners' chances the next go around because I just think that when you have key veteran players, such a long year, it really is a war of attrition. We're starting to see the Eagles start to be, beaten up a little bit. And I just think that every day that goes by, it's more advantage to the younger team, and the Niners are the younger team. They have more youth on their side. So we'll see. But I asked Forster about Jalen Carter. I said, what separates, because he highlighted 2 guys yesterday, Hassan Reddick, who's going up against Colton McKivitz. And he talked about how Reddick, he liked him in Arizona, but he's totally gotten to a different level with Philadelphia, and that he's so fast, around the corner that it puts a lot of pressure on McKivitz. I think they're probably going to help McKivitz against Reddick. But when I asked him specifically about Jalen Carter, I said, what stands out about Carter? And he's like, just the explosiveness, at that size. I mean, Jalen Carter just gives you a few moves. That's, 6'3", 315 pounds. He's got explosive movement and speed that you just don't see in a 315-pound man. So he's going to be an absolute beast. He was a monster wrecker at Georgia. Everybody knew that he was their best. He had some off-field things, and he didn't interview real well. Supposedly when he went up to Seattle, the Seahawks really wanted him. at the top of the draft. He didn't work out well. He didn't interview well. They kind of felt like maybe he didn't want to play in the Pacific Northwest, and so they went with Devin Witherspoon. But yeah, Jalen Carter is a spectacular talent. And
you know who he reminds me of a little bit is Vita Vea.
Oh, he's way faster. Vita Vea is bigger and broader, but this guy is like, to me, he reminds me of like kind of a young Reggie White.
Well, come on, you just can't go a young Reggie White. It's like every good quarterback is a young Tom Brady. Come on, Reggie White's one of the greatest football players ever.
And this guy's got some of the greatest talent I've ever seen. I mean, we're talking about a 315-pound guy who ran 4.95, and supposedly, could have run faster. Some people feel like he's a 4.7 guy that just kind of didn't really run well, and showed up at 4.95. You're talking about incredible movement skills. When I saw this guy at Georgia, he wearing 99, I thought, wow, look at this guy. Look at the movement ability. He's got short area explosiveness, and then he's also got speed. So he's just he's a monster. He's a wrecker. He can get to, he can show explosive movements inside and he's a lot more refined than you would think. As a guy who's a rookie in the NFL. I mean, it's a technique-rich position, and yet his technique is really, really sound. So,
sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all.
What role, if any, do you think Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason play in this game in terms of just being, the understudy for Christian McCaffrey? Because the Eagles are the kind of team that takes starch out of running backs. I mean, it really does. They do. They hit hard. You feel the Eagles when you're playing them. You feel that football team. I think it's in the fourth quarter's best interest to make sure that Christian McCaffrey's got a little life left in those legs come fourth quarter. And get Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason involved. It's something that you and I have been talking about for weeks here.
Yeah, I don't think Mason's going to play at all. I really don't. He was on the injured list.
What happened?
Well, right now, I think he's battling a hamstring or something. I think he might have tweaked it in practice.
Okay.
So that's what's going on with him right now. Elijah Mitchell, I think it'll be McCaffrey and Mitchell. And I think this is a McCaffrey game. I think you're going to see McCaffrey in there for almost all of the snaps. There may be a series in this game that they lean on Elijah Mitchell. I think in an ideal world, McCaffrey can play all the snaps, and then Elijah Mitchell's there in the fourth quarter as a dependable, not going to fumble, run between the tackles, get a couple key first downs in the fourth quarter. I mean, I would say if you ask me, what do I think we're going to see? I think you're going to see all McCaffrey, maybe one series of Mitchell if the 49ers are leading and want to bleed some clock and give CMC a blow. Or you could see all CMC and then Mitchell maybe in the fourth quarter with a lead to try to, put the game away. Shanahan really believes in Mitchell and his ability to, if it's blocked for 2, he gets 3. If it's blocked for 4, he gets 5. And he takes great care of the football. He's very dependable. So I think you'll see Mitchell maybe if the Niners get a lead, one series in the first half. And if things go really well, you'll see Mitchell in there in the fourth to help put the thing away.
Debo, more carries than Elijah Mitchell?
Yes.
I think so too. I mean, that's the thing. I think what happened to Jordan Mason, hamstring concerns aside, if he tweaks something this week, was that Debo Samuel is rounding into healthy enough to where Kyle wants to get him involved in the razzle dazzle and out of the backfield. And it's just the 49ers are at their best when Debo is involved. And he was really involved against Seattle. I expect him to be really involved in this game too. And I think he was so involved against against Seattle that the Eagles are going to be on double Debo alert, no matter where he goes. If you, the fact that he pulled up to throw a pass in the last game, Ayuk didn't spring open, so he didn't let it fly. But I think that's got to be on the mind of the Eagles. The one coach that we haven't talked about at all is Sirianni, who, is look, I don't know how good he is anywhere else, but he seems to be a really good head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, man. Whatever he's putting down, that team is picking up, and he's a little fiery. He's got some red ass in him. He yells at fans when he's walking off the field. Sirianni is a coach that you hate when he's coaching against you. If he were your coach, you'd probably like him,
I guess. I mean, to me, he rubs me wrong, man. I just do not like Sirianni. I just think what other coach can you think of mugs for the camera? I mean, he did that in a game. I don't know. I mean, coaches should coach, and I don't think coaches should talk on the field to fans and that kind of thing. This guy will scream at fans, and he's a different cat for sure. I mean, you can't say anything about his coaching. I mean, he's done some incredible things as a coach. I mean, his team's ready to play, and they play smart, and there's an intensity about him, and maybe his team has to cash the checks that his mouth writes, but it seems like, he's emotional, he's volatile, he's Philly. Here's one of the reasons I can't stand him. Here he is right here. This is him in so won't see it. By the way, this guy in front of him is Bob Lang. If you recognize Bob Lang.
Oh, yeah, I do remember Bob.
Bob Lang's lost a little hair here, and he's walking in front of Sirianni. This is after they beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Here it is.
Hey, I don't hear anymore, Chiefs fans! See ya! Hey, I don't hear anymore, Chiefs fans! See ya!
I mean, I don't mind emotion. I don't mind that. But yeah, yelling at fans and swearing at them walking off the field, it probably is a little conduct unbecoming an NFL head coach. But I think
I don't know, man.
Look,
I don't know.
I think his team feeds off of it.
Yeah.
I do. Philadelphia.
What about this one when he found the camera and he's like, do you remember that when he was starting mugging for the camera on the sideline in the playoffs last year? He's just I don't know. He says I think he's probably a good guy deep down. He's just if he's your coach, you probably love him. If he's not your coach, he kind of reminds me. He's the most easy to hate coach since Jimmy Johnson, because he reminds me a lot of Jimmy Johnson in that he's damn good and he's very brash and will tell you.
Well, and again, that fits Philadelphia. I mean, the wallflower, the quiet type that don't want to get into it, don't want to mix it up, afraid of Howard Eskin. Like, that doesn't do well in Philadelphia, I mean, right. You need to be there's a town where having an awful lot of I'm a dickhead too in your DNA will help you.
Well, supposedly he listens to the song from Rocky IV, No Shortcut Home.
There's no easy way out.
No easy way out.
There's no shortcut home. That's where Rocky shifts 64 times in a Ferrari. There's more shifting than there is driving in that montage.
It's hilarious too, because supposedly he's going like 85 miles an hour through the city of Philly, and yet if you look at his eyes, he looks like he's kind of staring off to the right and left in the distance as this car that he's operating, this sports car, is going 85 miles through the middle of a city.
Larry,
it's just
Apollo just died. Cut the man some slack, would you? I mean, he's got his buddy in his arms.
Hey, I gotta play you one more thing here. This was the great Jody Mack. I had him on this week on the Crib
I love
show.
Jody.
Jody Mack is one of my favorites, and I asked him. I said, "What's the talk in Philly?" And listen to what he says here. Talk? Is it Okay, Jody, you do a lot of radio, so you talk to the fans. You're on the front lines. You get a chance to get a real feel for it. What's the big dialogue centered on this week with the 49ers coming to town? Is it just a lot of trash talk? Is there a certain matchup the Eagle fan feels like they can exploit? Is there what's the talk? What gives the Eagle fans the swag? If they didn't already have swagger, what would give them swagger, or what are they talking about on the airwaves out there?
It's it's funny, Larry. It's a carryover from last year, and I got a lot of this before the NFC Championship game, which I had to say, okay, if you're going to take that attitude, that's on you. I'm not going there. The Brock Purdy, same way the 49ers did after the fact, saying we would have won the game.
Right.
Eagle fans before the game was playing, Brock Purdy is not coming into our house and winning. Well, you don't know that. I'm glad that you have confidence. I'm glad that you feel that way, but I wouldn't use that word will not. Probably will not. I don't think he will. It'd be a surprise if. All those things you can say, but they're very definitive and declarative about Brock Purdy's not coming into this house and winning. Okay, if you beat, well, and you didn't beat Purdy last year, beat the 49ers.
Right.
If Purdy's on the field for all 4 quarters and the Eagles do something they haven't done in a while, win by double-digit points, then yes, you're going to be able to go, what I tell you, Jody, Purdy's not winning in this house. But if Purdy goes in and wins, a lot of people are going to have to eat their words here in Philadelphia.
Okay, Jody, you do a lot. So there you go. And
underestimate Brock Purdy at your own risk. The NFL has not done very well underestimating. And by the way, I just want to give Jody a little. I've never seen anyone quite wear a pair of headsets like that. I mean, he is like this. I mean,
so
who wears their headphones like this except for Jody?
Well, hey, when he's on IP, he's on WFAN, he's on CBS Sports Radio. So I decided, yesterday, and a lot of people didn't like this question. I got a lot of heat for this, but I asked Purdy yesterday because I knew this was not like one guy that I talked to. I talked to 3 different Philly guys. You talked to John Kincaid. Almost all of them centered on, well, Purdy. They're not coming in here with Brock Purdy and beating the Eagles. Like Purdy's the weak link. And so I asked Brock, and I made sure that he heard this. And here's the question from yesterday's presser that some people kind of got mad at me on Twitter for asking this question.
Did you promote your YouTube channel? Did you hold up a clip of your channel and say, look at this?
No.
You should have. All right, you can click a button there or something?
Oh, I didn't. Wait, hold on a second. I might not. Did I miss it here? Hold on. Maybe
you might have played it on your end, but it didn't pop.
Oh,
up.
I get you. Hold on. I'm playing this. I'm losing my mind here. All right, so you got a lot of buttons on this. Okay, so here we go. We got to share the screen. There we go. Okay, here we go. Here it is.
Brock, the media people I've talked to this week describing the dialogue around this game said that the Philly people feel like specifically you are the weak link. I know you say you play with a chip on your shoulder. How does that motivate you in any way that the perception is that you're the weak link?
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that, so I don't really know exactly how I feel about that. They think that's fine. Yeah, I don't really know. I'm playing quarterback for the 49ers, and we have a good team. I'm just trying to do my job and help them win. So, yeah.
So there you go. And it wasn't my favorite question to ask. It's me. I'm a Purdy believer, but I heard it enough times this week, and I thought, you know what, this is a guy who absolutely plays with a chip on his shoulder, absolutely takes notice of what's being said. Let's add a little chip to that chip. And you saw it there. He smiled and everything, but he took notice of it. And we'll see how he plays on Sunday. And we'll see how Philly fans feel about him being the weak link. Because and I know that not only has he not been the weak link, he has led them to this point. He is the number one reason that the 49ers are playing so good.
And I
on
think he's got to
offense.
be part of the reason why they win this game. If they win this game, I mean, there's a secondary to be taken advantage of, and that's not the job of the running back or the offensive tackle to take care. It's the quarterback's job to take advantage of that weakness, and it's his job. I think it's
Getting yelled at in the chat here. Larry Irwin Kwong. Larry equals Brock's gas man. #motivation. This is what Bazzi Mian. I agree with you here. He says, thank you for the donation. He says, reminds me of his reaction to Patrick Peterson.
Kind of, yeah. When he's like, "Oh, is that Pat Pete? Did I go after him on that? Yeah, you did, and you did." Here's the thing: there are so many different, stations at the buffet table that a real, true pro NFL quarterback has to be good at, and one of those elements of, in order to serve a full meal, you got to have this too, is you got to have a good podium game. Brock Purdy's podium game is as much a 10-year NFL vet as some of the actual game footage that he puts out there. I mean, he really is a mature young kid, and he didn't take your total setup. Hey, Brock, in Philadelphia, they think you're a total pussy. What do you think about that, Brock? I mean, it's the way that he, just sloughed that off and said, I'm smart enough to not give anyone any bulletin board material. I'm just going to smile and tell you that I got a job to do and we got a good team. That's savvy, man. That's why this kid is not going to play for just a handful of years, but could have a decade-long career if he's healthy enough to have such a thing in the NFL. I mean, what I don't understand is how people pick and choose what is important only based on whether or not it helps make their argument about a quarterback. There are people who would want to dismiss an athlete and say, well, then look beyond the athletic prowess and then into the numbers. Let's get into the analytics. Let's get into the deep stats, the advanced metrics. Not only does Purdy, I think, absolutely amaze people with how much of an on-field athlete he really is. I mean, he's got great legs, he's got great footwork, he's got great speed, he's got pretty good burst, he can get to a corner. He's more of an athlete. You look at him, you underestimate him as an athlete. And that's where I think a lot of mistakes are made. Don't underestimate this kid as an actual athlete, because he might not have the body type, but boy, he's got the wiggle in him. He really does. And then
he's got escapability. He's got the same thing that Mahomes has. They don't run fast, really, for the stopwatch. You wouldn't necessarily call Mahomes fast, but he can spurt away. You wouldn't necessarily call Purdy fast, but he's got he's got that 1-5-4 10-yard split, right, which is very similar to Tyreek Hill. Football. So, I mean, it's quickness. It's short area quickness. It's like JT Snow. JT Snow, if you're a Giants fan, one of the short area quickest guys you're going to find, it made him a Gold Glove first baseman. You put him on second base and somebody singles to center field, he's thrown out by 10 feet. Yeah, he's slow. He's not fast in a 40-yard deal. He's not fast in a sprint, but he's very quick. And that's what Purdy is. He's very, very quick.
So if you want to denigrate the athlete and then say, well, it's deeper than that, you got to go inside the numbers. What I don't understand is how Brock Purdy, he's got the best numbers in football. Like, he's not at the top of he's not around the top of the list. It's him at the top of the list. I mean, one of the theories that I brought up with John Kincaid is that, look, if Brock Purdy were just perceived as cooler, like if his name were Johnny Laserbeam, and he wore the cool shades or something, like if he just checked the box of America thinks this guy's cool, however you check that box, I wouldn't know how, I'm not cool. But but however you go about checking that box, had Brock Purdy checked that box, I think a lot of people would be telling you, man, I really like this guy. Because the boxes that he does check are all this like, oh, best passing ratio, best touchdown to pass ratio,
best under pressure.
Yeah. Exactly. He's the best against any defense you can throw at him. He's literally in a quadrant of a flow chart of every single NFL quarterback. He's in a quadrant that no other quarterback is even close to.
And while operating behind an offensive line that's 28th in the NFL in pass block win rate.
How come whenever Aaron Rodgers is having an MVP year, people will tell you, like, look at all these advanced metrics, and it just shows you that he's the MVP. But when it's Brock Purdy doing it, all of a sudden, these advanced metrics don't matter nearly as much. Like, that's
and look at all the people who are yelling for CMC to be the MVP, when really it's been a quarterback award, and Brock's number one in all these categories. Do you think that, if Mahomes was number one in all these categories, people would be like, oh, yeah, he's the hands down MVP?
Oh, it would be
because it's Brock. It's like, oh, yeah, well, that's an aberration.
Right.
He's got to be somebody else.
He's number one in the NFL in all these categories, but that's just happenstance. Like he's a
Shanahan
along for the ride there.
Or here's the other one. If the Niners lose, Shanahan's got on the hot seat. Shanahan sucks. Shanahan, but then when it's time to talk about Brock winning the MVP, he's got Shanahan.
Right.
He's got Shanahan.
Right.
Not even factoring in that when Brock Purdy came off the bench in week 13 last year against the Dolphins, all non-Jimmy Garoppolo quarterbacks under Kyle Shanahan were 9-29. And yet Brock comes in, plays great, and suddenly he's got Shanahan. Beathard had Shanahan. Mullins had Shanahan. All these other donkeys that couldn't win. Jack had Shanahan, but suddenly Brock wins games, and it's Shanahan. So it's
just another example of the argument and being able to redefine someone to just fit your argument more than be consistent with how you define someone. Jim Harbaugh is literally the Lord of Ann Arbor. Everything that happens in his fiefdom and his kingdom, he is the master of. He pulls every single puppet string. There is no detail or element of Michigan football that escapes him in any way, shape, or form right until they get in a cheating scandal. And it's, Jim never knew. He was just a victim of circumstance. Jim Harbaugh had no idea who Connor Stallions even was. And he didn't know about any of this sign-stealing scandal. And Jim, who is a control freak, had no control over any of this. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Like suddenly he's like a vendor in the big house.
Right. Oh, he's lucky to be here. He had no idea.
Get your popcorn. He's just suddenly just a guy walking around instead of like the czar that all is Michigan football.
Let's go into some of these
supers.
Supers, yeah, absolutely.
Let's get into it here. Let's get into it.
We love everyone. We see that the comments are flying. We just don't have time to read all of them. And people who pay for the shine, that they get priority. So what do we got, Larry?
Well, we just got so many good ones. I don't even know where to start. Okay, let's go we'll just go right to the supers. Go right down the list. The mayor of Murfreesboro, Jay Hutch. Hutch Serves Gaming out in Murfreesboro. He came to the pregame show last week from Tennessee. Hutch? Yeah, Hutch is great. He says KNBR made a mistake when they got rid of Fitz and they broke up Fitz and Brooks, the Fitz and Brooks show. But I love the TKB show, and KNBR died the day they got rid of Larry and Rod. There you go.
KNBR actually died the day that they let me cross the street and go to 95.7 the game. It was a slow death, but I eventually killed him.
Well, you know what? Let me just make one statement on this, because there seems like there's an awful lot of dialogue about what happened this week at KNBR.
Well, people who want to hear about, I think we should save it for the end of the show a little bit. We will circle back to it, because we obviously have a deep connection with both the stations, and you specifically at KNBR. You were there much more recently than I was. I'm a decade removed from KNBR, but I still care deeply about some of the things that happened there that weekend.
I do as well.
And we have a lot to say about that.
We'll hit that. You want to hit that last?
Of all the super chats to start with, that wasn't the one.
Well, I'm just going right down the line. We're going to take them in the order they came. Rob Watson says it's the final countdown.
Here we go. Asia.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Clarence Beeks, member for 17 months, says let's effing go. Thank you, Clarence.
Clarence Beeks.
Do you know Clarence Beeks? Damon, are you familiar with Clarence Beeks?
It's a character in a movie, is it not?
It was the guy who was the guy who set up Dan Aykroyd in Trading Places. Remember, he
Yes.
was the guy. Somebody here has a marked, we marked a $100 bill.
Yeah, okay.
That guy was such a jerk. Remember, my favorite scene is Clarence Beeks is back in the day when there was a phone booth. Remember the phone booth?
Yes.
Younger people say, "What's a phone booth?" Anyway, there was a phone booth, and the guy's on the street of Philadelphia, and somebody comes up to him, and he's on the phone, and he goes, "Get lost, maggot." This guy was just ugly and just wrong in every way.
It just shows you when you act like that and you treat people like that, at the end of the movie, you get stuck in a rubber gorilla suit and you get humped by an actual gorilla.
That's right. That's
There you
right.
go.
Trading Places, which is best known for full frontal nudity from Jamie Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis.
Strong scene. Very important slice of my developmental libido. Thank you, Jamie.
Jamie Lee Curtis, man, you had it going on back in the day. All right, Discovery Bay Comics says radio is dead. The talent is right here on YouTube. Appreciate you too for keeping it real.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, brother. Glass Half Full guy says, did you guys see Colin Cowherd's take that Purdy isn't the guy because he wears his hat backwards? That's a dumb take to me. I mean, seriously,
he's out of things to talk about. Like you're inventing new ways to not like someone because you didn't invite them to dinner, so you don't want to serve them their meal. And
happy 101st birthday to Colin Cowherd. Thank you. Congratulations on Colin for being 101 years old. I mean, seriously, if you want to sound like the old man, get off my lawn. You don't like Brock Purdy because he wore his hat backwards to a presser? Colin, seriously, check yourself, bro.
Yeah, that's a bit. I mean, didn't we do that with Ken Griffey Jr. in a batting cage in 1987? I mean, come on,
seriously. And Tom Brady's done it a ton. And who cares how you wear your hat? What's next? You don't like him because he got a tat or something? I mean, where are we going here? Oli Kao says, and if I butchered that, I apologize. He said, should we be worried about a letdown after a win against the Eagles? Hopefully no 3-game losing streak again.
Well, no, because I think you got a really good game to get your full attention right after the Eagles too.
Yeah. Seattle.
I mean, Seattle is, look at it this way. Had Seattle won on Thursday Night Football, it would even be more of attention. But there's enough of a division rivalry there that I don't think
I think his premise is wrong. The old saying, if your premise is wrong, your conclusion is wrong. I don't believe the Niners let down after Dallas. I think they ran into a really good defense on a wet day. They lost Debo. They lost Trent. They got McCaffrey hurt, and they still had a chance to win it, and the rookie kicker missed a kick. And then what happened the next week? Then they got absolutely crushed on third down by Kirk Cousins. The week after that, they got beat by a Bengals team and a quarterback that was absolutely peaking, and in my opinion, would have been a Super Bowl caliber team if Burrow hadn't gone down. I think Burrow's, I don't know how you feel, but I'm a Burrow head. I think Burrow's spectacular, and I just think that Cincinnati easily could have been a Super Bowl team. They had all the makings, and it just didn't happen injury-wise for them.
Yeah, no, look, it's,
I don't think anybody let down.
Joe Burrow isn't a value add. He is the center of the map. Without him, the Bengals got nothing. And with him, they are maybe good enough to win a Super Bowl. That's who he is. It's why he was the number 1 pick in the draft.
Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. They ran the ball well. They've got the H brothers on the other side with Hubbard and Hendrickson. They had 5 DBs that ran sub 4.3 or something like that. And the Niners couldn't run wide. They couldn't. I give the Bengals theirs. They were pretty damn good. Wonder Boy says, thanks for the content. If there's time, I have a nerdy radio question. What was it like to do a show with Radnich? Did Hammer ask you to rein him in? No, nobody asked me to rein him in. And doing a show with Gary was wonderful. He was the ultimate entertainer. He loved to talk to people. And he I was there for the minutia, and he was there to, to be the MC and be the entertainment. And it worked, and we got 12 shares.
I have the exact opposite experience. There is never a worse co-host, a less honest person that I've ever worked with in my life than Gary Radnich. I got no hard feelings about Gary. Didn't work, but yeah, I did total opposite experience with.
But Damon worked with him for how long? And I worked with him for a decade. So you worked with him for like 2 weeks or something.
Like 3 days before he started playing the "I'm not coming in" bullshit card. Here's the thing. I scared the hell out of Gary because he shrunk when he was next to me. That's what happened. To use Gary's own words against him, he shrunk when I was in the room.
I'll push back and say that Gary has to fully respect the people that he works with, and he didn't have that respect. You guys hadn't cultivated that relationship. I had a much different relationship with him. We had many, many, many battles.
Well, I didn't kiss his ass either. I mean, that's why he didn't like me.
Well, I didn't kiss his ass, but I
wasn't there for any of his bullshit.
I didn't kiss his ass either, but he had respect. He had respect for me because we had gone head to head. I don't know. I mean, that's my perception of it. Bazzy Mion says, reminds me of his reaction regarding Patrick Peterson.
We did that. Yeah, about Brock just blowing off criticism and nonsense.
Outside the echo chamber, pig in a pickle.
This
would be a good
month.
That's right. On the 17th of December, I'm going to be doing a meet and greet. Damon gave me the idea of doing a meet and greet with fans. And so on the 17th of December, coming up here in 16 days, for the Niners-Cardinals road game, we're going to do a 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. meet and greet at Pig and a Pickle in Corte Madera. Don't go to Emeryville. Go to Corte Madera in Marin. And we're going to watch the Niner game, drink some beers, have some barbecue, talk shop. Kev will be there. My wife will be there. Damon's planning on coming with his wife maybe, and definitely his mother is going to be in town. So
the Duchess is coming.
I'm bringing everybody. I'm bringing my family, my kids, everybody I can round up. We'll all be at Pig and a Pickle. So join us on the 17th. I realize there's lots of people who watch our YouTube channels from, either outside the market or maybe they're in Sacramento, LA, wherever. But we will be there on the 17th for Niners Cardinals, and we'll do the postgame show from Pig and a Pickle. So join us on the 17th at Pig and a Pickle. Damon Stainbrook, the owner of Pig and a Pickle, just checked with me yesterday. We're on the dates now. You know what I would suggest? We're going to be there from like noon to like when it closes at 8:00. It's a great shopping mall, and it's December 17th. So if you're not into the Niners, maybe you are, maybe you don't want to sit in the restaurant for a bunch of hours, but stop by, have something to eat, and then if you want, go Christmas shopping. It's the 17th of December. Corte Madera is awesome.
It's fantastic. It really is. I've been there a couple of times, and
it's a great mall. So you can go, and it's an outside mall. So you can and there's all kinds of stores all over there. So stop by, say hello, have some brisket, have a beer, and then go Christmas shopping for a couple hours, and maybe come back and watch the Niners Cardinals postgame show. And Damon, you're always part of our postgame. I don't know what your deal is that day, but you're more than welcome to join us on the postgame show from Pig and a Pickle.
Well, the thing is, I've got my own postgame show to host, of course.
But are you doing it that day because you're gonna have your mom and your wife?
No days off, Blair. No days off.
Okay.
But yeah, I will. When I wrap up, if I can hop on with you, I will for a little bit. That's kind of
if you want. If you're home at that point, then do it from home. But if you want, you could probably go live in just a few feet away from us and do your own post game show via your laptop and that kind of thing, and
throw rolls at you while we're doing food fight,
dueling post game shows, and then you can come on over.
Look, it's great barbecue. It's
the
great
best.
barbecue. It's going to be a great crowd. A lot of like-minded people. I really liked Damon when I met him. I'm kind of a Damon guy. Larry, you got some very important Damons in your life these days, and I look forward to being up there with you. It's going to be great to come out and support you for all the support you've given me. By the way, the support of the audience in just the last few days has been extraordinary. I've crossed the 10,000 subscriber threshold, which is a big deal in the YouTube hierarchy. I think you're the one who told me, Larry, only 2% of all YouTube channels get more than 10,000 subscribers. So
It's very difficult to get to 10,000 subs, man. So way to go.
so it's good there. And boy, anyone who is watching Larry and I take over this market from YouTube. Larry, we're the biggest sports talk radio station in town. Whenever we do something together, we have a bigger audience than both stations combined for the most part.
1,000 people in the room right now watching this thing. Betsy Mion says, did you see now even Dick Vermeil compared Brock to Kurt Warner on 95.7 The Game the other day? Seems like every ex-player coach respects and praises Brock. I heard Steiny tease that they were going to have Dick Vermeil on, but I didn't hear it because I was going into the Niner complex for the media stuff. So I missed the interview, but maybe I'll go online on the Odyssey app and check it out. Dick Vermeil is one of my favorites. One of my
I'm
absolute
encourage
favorites.
everyone to avoid the Odyssey app. It's run by assholes.
Rommel Ramos, the Desert Fox. For those of you who know your global history, he says, Larry, I'm curious as to what man cave or room you're in. Looks like a soundproof carpeted closet. It's a studio that I have in my home, and yes, when you do radio, if you've ever been in a radio studio, they'll have like these wall panels. Instead of using the wall panels, I had the carpenter who built the studio do pad and then carpet on the walls. So it is carpeted. It's 4 walls carpeted around here for sure. And that's what gives it the soundproofing so you don't have the echo.
It's Larry's safe room.
But I mean, this is it. This is master control here. I've got the TV, I've got the computer, I've got another computer, camera, lighting, everything. It's all right here. We will be dressing up the studio though during Christmas break. I've ordered a Krug Show neon light. I've got an on the air sign. I'm going to go with some paneling. Probably going to take down some of these flags. Nothing against the flags. I like them, but we're going to kind of switch the look up, give you a little bit more of a little bit less 49er look and a little bit more of kind of just a broadcast studio look with some paneling. So that's the plan. We'll see where it goes.
So you've already done some Christmas shopping for yourself, is what you're saying?
I told Kev, I said, hey, Jesse's got the last second sports neon. I said, I got to get a neon. So he's chasing it down.
Okay.
We'll see if he can get it. Clown Man says, I don't usually super chat, but Damon and Larry, I will absolutely acknowledge and recognize real sports talk without, quote, social derangement talking points like other radio shows. Thank you for the fresh air.
Well, thank you. I don't know who's dabbling in social derangement. We have our own level of derangement over here, but it's usually applied to sports. So thank you very much, Clown Man, for being here and being a part of it.
Strawberry React says week 13 last year was the week Brock Purdy came in for the injured Jimmy Garoppolo. Week 13 this year, Brock is now playing the team that knocked him out of the NFC Championship game full circle. Yeah, I think, it's funny. I was on Brock Purdy well before that point, right? And I can remember sitting in the press box at Levi's. And right when Jimmy went down, Caleb Homeras from the 49ers is sitting next to me. And I'd said so many things about Brock Purdy. He's like, hey, man, your boy's coming in. And I was so confident that he was going to do the job that I said, the 49ers just got a serious upgrade at quarterback. And I said it loud enough where people in the first row looked up at me like, are you a freaking nut? It's like, we just lost Jimmy Garoppolo, and now some 7th round guy that nobody's ever heard of is coming in, and you're saying they've got an upgrade. But I was convinced that he was better than Jimmy Garoppolo, even well before he played there.
Look, you know how much I respect your opinion, and you were definitely, the first person talking about Brock in a very, very positive light. What made me really circle back and think, all right, maybe there is something there, is that Kyle Shanahan throws compliments around like manhole covers.
Right.
He does not offer an awful lot of compliments based on practice or training camp or anything like that. And when he was at a podium one day and said that he's never in his entire career been more excited about a third string quarterback than he was Brock Purdy, that's the first time I was ever like, well, holy shit, he doesn't talk about anybody like that. He doesn't talk about anybody like that. And I think that Kyle, pulled back the curtain a little bit right there and gave you the first real glimpse as to what he thought.
When was that?
The future would be. God, it was, I'm saying right about when Garoppolo was having I don't remember exactly when it was.
Well, I'll say this. The Niners played their cards close to the vest, to the point where a beat writer, a nameless beat writer, because he's a good guy. I'm not trying to out anybody, but a beat writer came up to me 2 days before the cutdown, after Sudfeld got all the reps at practice, and said, and I had tweeted out that morning, Brock Purdy's a lock to make this roster. A lock. And this guy went to practice, waited for Sudfeld to get all the reps, and then came up to me at the end of practice and said, a lock? Really? He goes, I'll bet you Brock doesn't make the roster. And I'm thinking, and this guy is such a veteran at that point. I was like, and I was, I'm not a rookie, but I covered it for the radio. So I hadn't been, last summer in camp was my first summer where I was there every single day. And so I kind of thought about it for a second, and I'm like, wait a second, why are you even thinking about this? I go, you're on. I'll bet you right now, Brock makes this team for sure. I wouldn't have tweeted it if I didn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it if it wasn't so. And he's like, all right. So we agreed to $1 bet just because nobody's making big cash. And sure enough,
it's like trading places. Second trading places reference of the show, Larry.
That's right. Thank you. You will have $1. Thank you. What happened to your?
I don't know what happened there. I just went green for a minute.
Yeah, it was like somebody. I felt like I was watching Nickelodeon version of the NFL. Somebody scored a touchdown. Yeah, slimed. David gets slimed.
What the hell happened right there? I don't know. Let's not do that.
Slimed by the inner YouTube web. But yeah, we wagered $1 on would Brock make the team over Nate Sudfeld, and this guy's like, look, man, they didn't guarantee Nate Sudfeld $3 million. I don't care about the $3 million, and they don't either. I'm like, Brock Purdy's making this team for sure. Needless to say, I got my $1.
Look, not to get us going on another tangent. I know we're in the super chats right here, but how come the MVP debate, the center of that word is value? Well, how do you define value? Well, it depends on who you ask. There's a lot of different ways to define value. How about Brock Purdy being hands down the unanimous MVP based on the fact that he has a contract which points directly at him for being the most valuable person he's the greatest value add for the price point in the history of professional football. There's never been a player making $800,000 as a quarterback that has ever had an effect on the entire league the way that this guy has had. I don't want to start this Brock Purdy MVP debate. I don't.
Russell Wilson, he won a Super Bowl on a rookie deal.
Sure, but that's still, he's a first round draft pick. Or no, I guess Russell wasn't, right? He was a third round draft pick. That's still, he's making $1 million. I'm sure that when Russell Wilson took that first snap, his paycheck was applied to the salary cap. Brock Purdy's pay is so little, it's not even factored into the salary cap. That's how little money he's making.
I know.
There's never been a player at a position of importance making that little money playing this well, maybe in the history of football. So if that's not value, what is?
Trent Williams said it. He's like, when the Niners drafted Brock Purdy, it was like hitting the lottery, Powerball. It absolutely is.
I'm going to take it a step further. Trent's example is saying that we went and purchased a Powerball ticket and then won. It's even better than that for the 49ers. It's like they were walking down the street, bent over and picked up a discarded Powerball ticket. And then that's the winner. I mean, they didn't even buy the lottery ticket. They just found it. That's how much of a value this guy has been. All right.
I'll tell you the one other thing. The one thing that really did strike me on draft day, and I don't know if it struck other people. And granted, everybody's got a support system. Guys who can't play still have a support system. It deep down, it probably means nothing. But the room that Brock Purdy was in went crazy when he got drafted. Now, I'm not saying that other guys don't go crazy when their sons and friends get drafted in whatever round. But this is the last pick in the draft, and a whole room full of people were jumping up and down. Those people had either just total love for Brock, and no matter either way, it was his family, or they also kind of thought, you know what, this guy's pretty good. And it's like, I mean, I don't know. It struck me as like, wow. You know, I mean, there's a group of people watching this in Arizona somewhere, wherever Brock lives, who were like convinced that this was a great moment. And
well, it was and look, let's be completely honest. You put Brock Purdy on another team's roster. You make him a top 5 pick and put him in a bad situation, which all top 5 picks are like by definition walking into. Are we looking at this story in the same light? Is it playing out the same way? Of course not. Situations dictate professional careers as much as talent does, as much as hard work does. Brock found the perfect situation to extract the greatest version of the player that he can be early in his career than he could have found anywhere else. I really believe that. So it
was a perfect marriage.
It really was. It was
a guy who needed to be surrounded by talent, and a team that needed a quarterback who could play under pressure, and voila, it's all worked out. Kevin Woods has never trusted KNBR after they fired Bob France. Bob France. Wow.
That's a name. Look at it this way. When we sit down to write the history of KNBR, Bob's name's not even in the book. So I believe that you thought that was the defining moment of the station.
Yeah, Bob. When they let go of France, everything went south.
I was out right there.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that is hilarious. Danny Madera says Larry and Damon wish this morning show was daily. Traditional radio is dead to me. You guys are my go-to for Niners, Giants, and Warriors content. Niners win big Sunday, 31-17. Well,
Danny, thank you. Thank you very, very much. And let me just tell you that 49ers wake up. Larry and I have got some plans for it. We're too late in this year to, I think, go forward with all the plan. But there's something here that we know that we have, and there is going to be more of what we know we have coming to you in the coming months and weeks and years, because the revolution has officially begun, and we think that we're at the center of it. So we're glad that you feel the same way, and more of us is coming to a YouTube near you. I can promise you that.
Yeah. And by the way, we mentioned it last week, and we'll mention it again this week. We started with our good friend Charles, and Palmetto Superfoods as our sponsor. We're now searching for a brand new title sponsor of this show, 49er Wake Up, which we're planning on doing twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. And if you would like to be that sponsor, or your company, or somebody who has a company who would like to sponsor, we're driving a ton of people. It's easily the biggest YouTube audience in the morning here. Feel free, DM me, and a couple people have this week. We're kind of fleshing that out. We haven't come to any agreements yet, but if you want to have your company associated in any way with 49er Wake Up with Damon and I, reach out to either one of us, and we will discuss if we are mutually beneficial for one another. I think you're going to find that the rates to advertise on our YouTube show on 49er Wake Up is a great deal. C Mavo, hey C Mavo, throws in $10 just to say, hey,
just throwing a tip across the bar. Thank you very much.
Just there you go. Nancy Adams in the house says, to the best sports talk shows around, Damon and Larry. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate
Thank you, Nancy.
Name Butler. Is that right? Name Butler. Says you should get the guy who scouted Purdy on the show. Dave in Toronto.
Who was?
Okay.
Is there a definitive scout that we can attach to? He found Brock Purdy.
There's a guy named Slowick, not the one who went to Houston, but
Not
another
Bobby
guy, Slowick, not Bobby Slowick, but I think Kevin Slowick. I've got to look it up. But John Lynch is credited a certain guy for banging the table for Brock Purdy. And you're right. We should try to reach out and get him on the show. It'd be great. And if the Niners go to the playoffs and if they go to the Super Bowl, there's going to be an awful lot of people seeking that young man out. I don't even know if he's a young man.
Thank you, Dave in Toronto. Shout out Canada.
Nancy Adams doubling back to the best sports talk show anywhere. Damon and Larry are the best in the Bay.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, those are all of our supers for the moment. And Red Eye drops this one in. He says, Bob Greasy is said to have scouted Purdy. You mean Brian Greasy? I think Bob Greasy was his father, who was a great quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. And then Dusty Gold says, remember the days of Scotty Sterling on early KMBR.
Well, look,
Scotty Sterling is the former executive of the Sacramento Kings. And you're right. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. I interviewed Scotty many, many years ago. And I, as a young kid growing up in the Sunset District, I listened to a lot of the radio, and Scotty Sterling, Ralph, Dave Newhouse, Candido, these were the guys who I listened to as a young kid. I mean, we're talking about like sixth grade, doing my homework, in my room in the Sunset District, listening to KMBR, and listening to kind of the birth of this genre, which is known as sports radio. And my guy was Candido, but Scotty Sterling was in there as well. And Scotty then transitioned to be a basketball scout and then a basketball executive. And at one point was the lead scout for the Sacramento Kings. He's no longer with us, though.
Well, all right. It feels we're getting closer to the end of the show. So I think now's the time we should talk about what a lot of people do want us to talk about. And that is that, something terrible happened in radio yesterday. And KNBR let go of Paul McCaffrey, who had an 18-year run in the mornings in a major market. And whether he was your cup of tea or not, you have to tip your cap to an 18-year run AM drive major market performer who, look, you and I both know Paul McCaffrey.
I worked with him. I did a show with him, Krug and Mac.
Look, if there were ever a guy who would have been told, like, all right, so we are moving on from you, but we are going to give you a final day to say goodbye, he would have appreciated that, and he would have handled it, and he wouldn't have been a jerk about it. And like, a guy who's been on the air that long deserves a chance to say goodbye. And it sucks that didn't happen. It stinks that a producer got let go. Lee Hammer got let go. You and I have a lot of history with Lee. I reached out to him yesterday. I reached out to Murph. When
Murph is still there.
Yeah, and look, when someone has let's just call it a radio death, right? It's not a real death, but that's Brian Murphy's partner. Like, the reason why Murph isn't on the air this week is because he's grieving the loss of his partner, and he's figuring out how he's going to captain the show by himself come Monday or whenever he does return. And that's a tough situation for him to be in. It's like when Ralph left Tom, when that happened, that was a really tough situation for Tom to have been put into. But you go forward because you see how fragile all these careers are, and you don't want to do anything that'll help them break your career. Given all the collateral damage of the people who we really like, who we have relationships with, that lost their jobs, including FP Santangelo, to me, the real tragedy of what happened at KNBR is that an entire day part, Larry, has been removed. And that's a day part that forged the careers that you and I have. And what hurts my radio soul is that there's no more proving ground for young and up and coming broadcasters. If there's no weekend programming because they can't afford to leave the lights on, and if there's no evening radio for, the lowest man on the totem pole, the lowest woman on the totem pole to cut their teeth on, where's the next generation of broadcasters come from? To eliminate basically your minor league system, it might save you an awful lot of money today, but it's going to cost you more money than you can even imagine tomorrow, because you're not going to develop any talent to take over for, a generation of broadcasters when they age out. You have to have a robust minor league system. And in the world of radio, evenings and weekends are the equivalent of a minor league system. And it hurts my soul because I love Sports Phone. And I don't want to speak for you, Larry, but I will, because I know for a fact you just love doing that show too. And you never were a guy that felt like you needed the prestige of morning or afternoon drive. You just really liked the show, and I did too. And I loved those callers, and I loved talking to so many people who were a rich part of the station. I mean, Sports Phone callers were as important to that show as the host was. And I can say that definitively because I was a host of it. And I'm sure you'll agree with me. That's what hurts the most. That's what hurts the most about what is happening in radio. We're watching a once great medium where real talent was developed slit its own throat in the name of corporate greed, and it's going to stop developing talent, and that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of feelings about this. Lots and lots of feelings about this. One, you're looking at the guy who took a guy named Baltimore Dave and called him Salty Balty. So I'm the guy who named Salty Balty because he was salty and his name was Baltimore Dave, and he kept calling the show. I did that show from 1997 through 2005, and
I did that show from 2005 through, I don't know, it was at least 5-6 years. I think I hosted Sports Phone before I went afternoons at 1050, and then the failed Radnich thing, then back to 1050, and then I was offered afternoon drive at 95.7 The Game. And that's why I left. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, well, Damon, you got fired from KNBR. No, I've not been fired from either radio station. I got laid off by one and I left the other for a better opportunity at the other. So, but yeah, it's,
I love the show.
Balti. I mean, I had Annie Baby.
Pound it.
I mean, she was a part of people's lives.
Well, I mean, I can remember sitting there in the office of Tony Salvador and him saying to me, because I'm saying, hey, when are you going to give me a date? When are you going to give me a daytime shift? And he's like, let me tell you something, partner. He's like, the number one biggest audience on this radio station is Morning Drive. The number two biggest audience on this station is Afternoon Drive. The third biggest audience on this station is post-game Giants. He goes, I wouldn't have you in that spot if I didn't think that you were incredibly valuable to us. And he told me at the time, you're going to make more money in this spot than I've ever paid anybody in this spot, and then I will ever pay anybody in this spot, because you mean that people turn off the radio at night listening to our station, and that means that my morning guys get first call in the morning. Tony was a very smart radio guy.
Right. When a person starts their car, if they were listening to you the night before, the radio still dialed into 680 the morning of.
Right. And so he said, hey, this means a ton to the radio station that you just not just host this show, but that you kick ass and do this show very, very, very well.
Well, and it was KNBR at night was satellite radio before satellite radio was invented. You could get KNBR in Wyoming. You could get KNBR in Mexico. You
still can, which is kind of why I hate to say it, and I'm not going to tell, KNBR or Copeland or any of the people who run the thing and make decisions how to make the decisions. But this was a mistake to get. I mean, it's one thing to say we're going to move on from this guy or that guy. to not do nights on the biggest stick on the western half of the country, where you can talk to Utah, you can talk to Phoenix, you can talk to LA, you can talk to Central California. You have the biggest stick, the biggest radio signal that there is on the western half of the country, right there, 680 on the dial when the sun goes down. And to give that power up and just be like, we're going to flip it to CBS Sports Radio is so unbelievably stupid and short-sighted that I don't even know what to say. All I would say is good luck to you. You've almost just you've really damaged yourself down the road, because you figure out a way to get somebody at a very cheap rate to do nighttime right till midnight. Figure that out. It does not cost a ton. You could easily do it cheaply. The fact that they are just going to relinquish it just kind of shows that they're not they don't understand the power of what that means to have that kind of reach. There's local reach when the sun's up. When the sun goes down, that local reach is not even regional. It's like literally everything west of the Rockies is within your list. You did it. I did it. We used to have a regular deal where we would say, hey, whoever's calling from the furthest distance away is first in line. And who's listening the furthest away? Scottsdale, Utah, you name it, LA, San Diego. I'm here. I'm there. I'm listening. And that's a huge signal. Huge signal.
By the way, White Wine Sipper is in the chat room right now. White Wine Sipper, one of the best call-in handles of all time. And I used to do a segment called Check the Power of the Tower. The person who called in from furthest away, we mailed them like a Giants pocket schedule you could keep in your wallet. Remember when those were a thing?
We used to just have the KMBR gift pack. So, I mean, literally, and there's so many people in the chat now who are talking about the sports phone with Krug and Bruce. Got to make it happen, guys. Yeah, I mean, seriously, they would be smarter to Jude Wellington says, I was a KMBR listener since Pete Franklin. Then I heard D Bruce during the shitty Dubs years. Both were game changers.
Thank you.
Pete Franklin, was a mentor of mine as well. I can remember my first day sitting in for Radnich during the weekday, and Pete comes in. He's like, sounding great, kid. You're sounding great. And I just, I love Pete. And I told Pete the next day, I'm like, Pete, I didn't have to drive home yesterday. I could float home after you told me I was sounding great. That's how much your acceptance of me meant to me. And he's like, don't, you're embarrassing me, kid. But, I really loved it. Dusty Gold says, I worked late and lived KMBR with Larry and Damon. Yeah, Cam Irwin, KMBR at night was the flamethrower. So, yeah, on one hand, this is not about Paulie Mack. This is not about FP Santangelo. This is about the migration of the audience from terrestrial radio to this. This is the star of media today, the phone. The phone is what everybody gets their media through. So when you get in the car, your phone doesn't pair to your car pairs to your phone. So this is the star. This has become the star. We could literally walk down the street in any city in America, and we could have $100 bill, and we could go house to house and say, we'll give you this $100 bill if you can produce a radio that's working, that has batteries, or is plugged in right now. And we would go to 40 houses before we would find somebody who actually had a radio that they regularly listened to.
Right. And that person would probably be able to qualify for senior specials at Denny's.
Right. They're the early bird blue hairs.
And look, now, and I love those listeners. I love the blue hairs. I do.
Of course.
But there are fewer of them. and they're not making more old people. As a matter of fact, by definition, there are less of them every year. One of the reasons why I didn't pivot to YouTube earlier in my career is because I was doing very well in radio, and I also wanted to concentrate solely on my show. You know, a big 4-hour afternoon drive show is enough of a show to not have to do another show too. But
I told the program director who preceded Adam Copeland at KMBR years ago, literally years ago, we need to be on YouTube.
Yep.
You know, watching the demographic get older and older and older. The demographics, the median age of the KMBR listeners, 42. 3 years later, the median age of the KMBR listeners, 45. 3 years later, the median age of the KMBR listeners, 49. It's like
older
the audience was getting older and older and older and older. And I said to them, go get on YouTube. And I got a million excuses of why they couldn't do it and shouldn't do it and wouldn't do it. And they want to do it. And they think it's a pretty good idea, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it until like 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago or whatever. I mean, these guys were asleep at the switch as their audience migrated. This is not about Paulie Mack. It's not about FP. It's about the migration to the digital space. And every year that goes by, 13% of the car population turns over. So think of it this way. How long have cars had the smart dash? Where, like, the same way your TV now has smart TV and you got YouTube TV. Well, how many years has it been since we've had the smart dash? Well, every year that goes on, there's more cars that don't have the smart dash and they're no longer in existence. And the new cars all do have the smart dash. And in the smart dash, the YouTuber and the podcaster is literally on an equal playing field with satellite radio and terrestrial radio.
Look,
they're all one button away.
Larry, if you're 48 years old, if you're 58 years old, if you're 68 years old, you have a romantic attachment to the radio that if you're 38 years old, you don't have. If you're 28 years old, you'll certainly never have. And if you're 18 years old, you don't even know what the fuck a radio is.
Oh, Damon, I have 4 children. I have a 23-year-old daughter. I have a 22-year-old son who's the producer of this show. I have an 18-year-old son. I have a 14-year-old son. I've been doing radio since 1997. When I started doing YouTube, my 14-year-old's like, Dad, you're on YouTube.
Right.
Son, I've been doing radio since 1995 on Sports Byline USA Radio Network with a producer named Damon something. I've been doing radio for a long freaking time. A long time. But he wasn't impressed by radio, but he was impressed by YouTube. So it just shows that times change. You got to change with them. It's the Billy Bean, adapt or die.
Well, and all you need to know about this round of layoffs too, and this shows to you that there's nobody. Radio is never supposed to be corporate. It was supposed to be show business. And the most important part of show business is the word show. It's why it's not called business show. It's called show business because you put the most important thing first. And the show's the most important thing. And the business aspect has ruined the show so incredibly, not only through lopping off hosts and not being able to do, they've replaced their used to be adults knew how to sell Salesforce with a whole bunch of inexperienced, cheaper labor workforce that doesn't really know how to go out and sell anything. And that's part of the downfall. And
there's just a lot of overhead costs.
Here's all you need to know about the latest round of layoffs at KNBR. Among them were their digital department. If as a radio station, you are gutting your digital department in 2023, you have just admitted to the entire world, we don't understand the direction that we're even supposed to be marching in. It would be like if you and I decided we're going to go to YouTube, but we're also going to cut off electricity to our homes.
Right.
Well, then you're really not going in the direction that you need to be going in. And radio we're watching happen to radio the same thing that happened to newspapers.
Right.
The inability to pivot from an old way of doing business to a new way of doing business is the reason why the dinosaurs are dying.
And look at what happened in newspapers. They at first they're like, well, do we, it's a quarter. Do we charge more? Then it was like, well, wait a second. What we'll do is we'll make it free. We'll give it away. And then, okay, so then we can't do it free. That doesn't work. Let's have everything behind a paywall. And they're still sitting there, and they've turned the biggest newspapers in the country into pamphlets. They're a quarter of the size they used to be, and they have no, not that they don't have credibility, but they have no circulation. They used to go to every house in the city. Now it goes to probably 10%, 5%. It used to be that older people looked at the newspaper as the greatest deal there was. Now the younger people look at, why would you pay a quarter for something you could read online for free?
Well, and beyond that is, why would you buy something that the minute you have it, it's obsolete? That's not how news works anymore. We want news immediately. We want it live. We want it.
I was watching the Ken Burns baseball thing a few weeks ago for a couple hours. It was on. And they used to have, when DiMaggio, we're talking about DiMaggio and the hit streak on 41, they would have a morning edition, a midday edition, and an afternoon edition. People would get in line for the midday edition after they read the morning edition. Then they would get in line again for the afternoon edition after they read the midday edition.
Right. 3 newspapers was the internet. That was their Twitter.
Right. So they were literally, that's where they were getting it. Now everything's about this. So there's no, people say, well, this team, this station put this station out of business. No, that's not true. It's not true at all. 95.7 has beaten KMBR in the ratings, and they're doing it better because Matt Nahagian is really, really good at what he does at maximizing everything that can be maximized via the program director's seat. But ultimately, what we're looking at is just an overall migration of the audience. It's not personal. It's just progress. And the audience is migrated to the digital space. And it's maybe like the first day that radio and every other smart dash, like if you're in your car, the first day you got a brand new car with a digital dash, you probably still listen to the radio, right? Because that was your habit. But after months and months and months of listening to the same tired commercials, you're like, well, wait a second. I can listen to a Niner podcast that goes 29 minutes long, and I can get from Cupertino to Walnut Creek and commercial free and just listen to Niner content on a podcast. It's all a button away. And now you're like, well, yeah, but there's no video. Yeah, I like TV. Now you can carry, YouTube. It's a television show. 74% of our audience watches this show on a big screen TV. I watch YouTube on my phone, but many people watch it on their televisions in their homes. So it's just, things have changed. Everything, there's always going to be change, and you got to change with it. And these guys are very talented guys. FP Santangelo is a really, former big leaguer. I found his show to be an easy listen. I've been friends with him for a long time. He's a very good baseball analyst. I would imagine he will do some Giants broadcasting as Crook and Type continue to do less and less. They'll need guys like FP. He's going to do well.
Compliment, but I'm going to give it to FP. You can hear the smile. You can hear the man smile. You can hear FP enjoying himself while he's hosting a show, and that is attractive to listeners. You can hear the smile.
Right. And Paulie Mack is a talented guy as well. He's going to do just fine. He's very talented, very interested, very much engaged. And, all I would say to everybody is the people, though, that were like, you people that are on social media are such idiots, and then they didn't want to be on social media, they missed it. The joke's on them. Because in reality, every single broadcaster is, whether you're on YouTube, AM radio, FM radio, satellite radio, just on YouTube, podcast, anybody who has a brand, if you're not trying to grow your brand in every way imaginable. Look at it this way. There used to be 2 buckets and you had to be in one of the 2. Now there's like 40 buckets. You better be on Instagram. You better be on YouTube. You better be on Facebook. You better be on Twitter. You better be on this and that and TikTok and everything. You better be engaged and have an audience. Why? Because there's an audience on Twitch. There's an audience on YouTube. There's an audience on Facebook. There's an audience, and you have to cultivate that your audience within all of those different small buckets. And now you need, and that's why we have Kevin as our producer, because we don't just do this show. We do this show and then he distributes it to all these different entities. And the reason Damon's at 10,000 subs right now is because Damon's really talented and he's cultivating an audience on 10 different platforms at once.
Larry, the old
not
saying-
one, hoping that it will bleed into everything, 10 different spots. And then suddenly he gets some audience from Instagram and some audience from TikTok and some audience from YouTube. And all of a sudden it all grows. So
right. I'm still not
that's
even
the
on
future.
TikTok. That's next year's that's next
Right.
year's
But
project.
I'm just saying that's where this thing is, where there's a million different not a million, but there's, let's say 25 different pools that you should be in all at once, getting your content out to them and communicating with them, because everybody's got something they're big in. Some people are huge on Instagram. Some people are huge on Facebook. Some people are huge on YouTube. Some people are huge on, whatever.
OnlyFans.
But you got to engage them in every single spot, and you gotta put your stuff out there. And I've enjoyed the YouTube thing immensely, simply because quality of life. I used to do a radio show that I missed my kids' games. My kid pitches in high school. He's only going to be in high school for one more year. It's like I got one more baseball season to watch him. Guess what? I was a season ticket holder this last year. I saw every game. He pitched against a bunch of 19-year-olds at St. Mary's. I was there. He pitched against, El Cerrito. I was there. He pitched against, De La Salle. I was there. I was at every game. Why?
Right.
Because I scheduled my live streams around my life. And so I got a chance to be more present with my family. Not to mention the growth and work being your own boss. I mean, I love 95.7. I'm still there working part-time, filling in and doing their pregame show for the Niners with the great Lo Neal. And I love being on there. Radio is in my soul. I'll always love it. Damon, I know that you feel the same way. It's like, it's a part of who we are.
Dude, it hurts.
But
I'm going to say, I'll expose myself. People are like, Damon, you still come off as bitter about being laid off. Yeah, I'm going to be bitter about that to the end of my life. I'm not going to just drop that bitterness. You're going to feel it when I talk about it, because it hurts that I'm no longer on radio. It hurts my broadcast.
And you won.
Again,
it would be one thing if you didn't win. Damon won. Damon and Rado beat Tom and Ray, and Tom is still there and you are not, and you won. So you have a right to be bitter as far as I'm concerned. But
here's the thing. One of the reasons why you and I have always gotten along is because we've always said there are 2 types of broadcasters. We all get fired. All of us. Very few people get that tip of the cap, goodbye, final show. So everyone gets fired. The question is, are you going to be fired because you said too much, or are you going to get fired because you don't say enough? You and I have always proudly stood in that first group. We were willing to push an envelope. We were willing to put ourselves out there. And we were 2 guys who were definitely going to get fired for saying too much, not enough. Well, there's now a third category. It's, where are you saying it? So, are you saying it in enough places? Like you said, all the buckets. Are you distributing yourself in enough places? And these radio stations don't know how to do anything other than put it on the radio. And if we put it anywhere else, we're competing against ourselves.
Right. No. Wrong.
Exactly. That's the wrong way to go about it. When I remember early in my career at KNBR, sitting in Lee Hammer's office, talking about how they wouldn't allow Giants highlights to be played on other stations with an attribute and credit to KNBR. You know, like Giants baseball last night, KNBR, John Miller on the call. He's like, no, that's our exclusive content. That's our exclusive content. We're not sharing it with anybody. I'm like, well, that's crazy, because if somebody listening on KGO, and this, by the way, this is before KNBR and KGO were under the same umbrella and part of the same company. But, you know, I used to say, why wouldn't you let KNBR highlights on KGO for Ron Owen to play? Because Ron would play the shit out of your brand on another brand. It's like you're telling me that Coke is willing to talk about Pepsi, but we're not going to let them? That's nuts to me. So
it's a sad thing, but all I would say is, don't look at the guys who got let go as, you know, like they were the weak link and now this thing's going to thrive. No. This is just a process. There'll be more people let go. Nobody celebrates it. And I'll say this, as somebody who has felt that, you know, it's a terrible feeling, but I always reach out, and I did reach out to both FP and Paulie Mack and traded texts with those guys. And I always just want to reach out the same way I reached out to Damon and said, hey, look, man, don't panic. Life is fine. You're still great. You just have to find, you know, it's like you were playing on this court, call it a pickup game. You just got to find a new court. You still got the basketball skills and you still got the ball. Now you're just looking for a new court. And it's the same thing.
And the truth is, the court that we're now playing on is Madison Square Garden compared to just a pickup court that radio is on. YouTube is the single greatest communication tool ever invented and widely distributed on planet Earth. Full stop. Full stop. I mean, you know, the advent of the iPhone and the advent of YouTube has changed communication for the better or worse. We're still trying to figure that all out, but it's changed communication in such a radical way that, you know, if YouTube were its own country, it'd be what, the fourth largest country in the world or whatever that stat is. It's insane.
It's a massive growing entity.
Right. 3 billion people are on YouTube every day. 3 billion people can't listen to KNBR. 3 billion people can't listen to 95.7 The Game anytime they want to. You don't have that reach. This is a global level of reach that no radio station, no cable company, no satellite provider could ever provide. So it's good to be here. It's good to be here. It's scary to get pushed here the way that I got pushed, the way that Paulie or FP is being pushed here, but they will find a very fertile hunting ground. And all you got to do is, if you have talent, is stick with it. And it's losing a job.
We're having a lot of fun. We're doing great. We're enjoying it. We're doing, you know, I mean, it's a TV show now. It's a TV show. And it's, you know, Damon's just started up. He's got 10,000 subs. I've been doing it for a year and a half. I've got close to 30,000 subs. Grant's been doing it for 4 or 5 years. He's got 70 something thousand subs. You know, these ultimately, you know, we love what we do. We're talking. I love people and I love sports. So I love to talk to people about sports. And this is another avenue that allows me to do that. And I love it. And to me, the best part of YouTube is the call-in shows. That's the best part.
And
the best part is the call-in shows.
So my 11 o'clock show, Larry, that I'm about to start in an hour over on the Plus. Today, we're reinventing Sports Phone. We're bringing Sports Phone back today to pay tribute to the dying entity of Sports Phone. So the 11 o'clock show is going to be nothing but video calls. So anyone who wants to call in, we're going to be doing that coming up at 11 o'clock. And I really hope you want to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form, Larry, because if there's one thing we want to do is serve the audience, and the audience has given us enough feedback to let us know that they want Trent Baalke and Ralph Barbieri to end each and every show that we do on 49ers Wake Up. So it's good to see you, Ralph.
Trent, you're so funny. You're always talking about how things go and, torn ACLs and, so much football. By the way, we've got a bunch of super chats. All right, before we vault into our Trent and Ralph finish, which we always do. Let's finish these supers here.
Let's get into them. Let's go.
I got to make sure that I've got the right ones here. Who has been
more viewers watching this channel than radio stations? Well, I would say that there's more talent on this channel than there are on radio stations. So that's a part of that too.
Okay. Kevin Wood says never trusted Cambiar after they fired Bob France. We got that one. Larry and Damon wish the morning show was daily. Traditional radio's dead to me.
Thank you, Danny.
C. Mavo
did it
for the heck of it. Nancy to the best sports talk show. Name Butler. You should be the guy who scouted. Okay. We got that one. This one
did
that one. Wait a second. We got a bunch here. Plus Army and Larry's Legion.
I like that. Thank you, Mike.
There you go. That's a new one. Ryan drops best in the biz, guys. Question. I think he just
Questionson.
Is there anything to Kyle being an over-analyzer and Sirianni seemingly not analyzing anything? Can Shanahan learn anything from Sirianni?
Paralysis by analysis is, I guess, what you're trying to bring up here. And maybe I think that if there is a trap that Kyle sets for himself, is he's always trying to demonstrate what a great play sequencer he is, where I'm a big believer, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like if you can win a game going student body right, student body left, you should just do that. And I think that Kyle tries to at times show everyone how clever he is and how smart he is. And that is where the Niners trip themselves up at times. So I kind of agree. I
think Kyle's a way better coach than Sirianni, to be honest. I think the star in Philly's Roseman, the general manager. Elite Archer says you are both delusional. Kyle gets exposed for the fraud he is on Sunday, and Purdy will be lucky to throw for 200 yards. The storybook BS is at its end.
Okay, here's the thing. Elite Archer,
Howard Eskin.
If you're right about this, victory lap the hell out of it. If you're wrong about this, we hope to see you on Monday with a full analysis of this position.
Exactly. Gold Rush says, Larry, please do live commentary during games. I don't know if I like that. I like watching the game.
Well, that's the thing. In order to be good in post game, you got to watch the game. And if you're doing the game, you're really not watching the game. I know that sounds nuts, and a lot of people don't realize that. But again, I'm not listening to the show that I'm hosting right now. I have no idea what we're even saying to each other, Larry. I'll rewatch this later. We're just too busy doing it to really listen to it as we're doing it. So I think that's, again, I start at the 2-minute warning. Little post game and Damon goes off at the 2-minute warning. But usually most games are in the bag right there. So,
where that got its legs was with Rogan used to do the watch parties and the what's it called when he would watch the UFC fights while they were going on, a fight companion. And a lot of people really dig it. And I know Chase Senior, who I'm going to be streaming with at 10:45 this morning, does in-game stuff and does a killing. He's got 100,000 subs over at Chat Sports on his Niner coverage, and they do a lot of that. I just don't know if it's me. I got to think about it. I like to watch it, digest it, come up with some themes, and then bring it to you.
Well, yeah. I think that the reason why 49ers Wake Up is so good, Larry, is because you and I are really good at reacting to something that just happened, and we go live and we get pretty in-depth in terms of analysis right as it just happened. But then you give us a night to think about it. You give us a night to get our notes together and compile some stats to support the arguments and positions that we want to make or take. That's when you and I are really dangerous. And that's why 49ers Wake Up is, I think, the best 49er recap show there is, because we're both good doing our post-game show, but you give us a night to really think about it. We come back that next morning, and we will be back at it at 8 a.m. Monday morning. No matter what happens in Philadelphia, we're on the air 8 a.m. right back here on Monday morning. And that's when we're, I think,
and then also, you get this. I don't even love tweeting during the game because it's like, you jinxed it. It's like,
right.
if you say anything, it's like, everybody's just up in arms. Yay area code. Yay area
Area cards.
Yay area cards. Should the Niners pick up Marcus Peters from the Raiders? I would.
Sure. It's just
You
an
need-
insurance policy. I mean, he gets burnt like toast sometimes, but I mean, better to
He's
have
volatile.
him.
He runs a little hot.
I don't know. I don't know.
But
How
I
about
like
this? I think that they got. I think that I'd be surprised if Marcus Peters were the difference between them going to the Super Bowl or not.
Yeah, no, I agree. Lean on Luter and Womack. But I would, I got no problem. Oh, the other one that I got to get your thoughts on. I think the Niners ought to go after Zach Ertz. Cardinals waived him. He's got an $11.6 million deal. If you'd be responsible for the prorated portion if you picked him up. So it's about 2.6 mil. But he's a good receiver, and keep him from Baltimore, keep him from Philadelphia. I would definitely pick up the kid from Monte Vista, Zach Ertz, and let him finish in a Niner uniform.
Hey, I got one
could.
more who might be playing or making a difference this Sunday question for you. Robert Beal Jr. activated.
Yes. Love he's very fast. And we're talking
He's
about 4.48, very
He's
fast,
fast.
very athletic. He had a play this summer where he dipped the shoulder on a pass rush off the right defensive end against Trent Williams, and Trent Williams never even got a finger on him. This guy is really fast, really talented. It's interesting. They've got Nolan Smith over there, another Georgia kid with great 4.4 speed off the edge. They don't use him. He's not even in their rotation. And the Niners haven't used Beal, but Beal does have impact kind of speed, and that could help them against Jalen Hurts. I'll be eager to see. That's one of the things I will be looking for. Do they make him active on game day? Flav says KMBR will never feel the algorithm. Sucks for them.
Feel the algorithm, baby. It's the name of Larry's first album. Feel the algorithm. Larry Krueger, light listening, smooth jazz. Feel the algorithm.
Love songs, nothing but love songs. We got a stop set coming up. Mesro01 says
How many
KMBR
people do you
died
think
when
wrote
Uncle
a stop
Gary
set?
retired. Miss his back and forth with Tony Bruno. Yes. Yep. G-Rad.
Not
Best.
that busy.
Elite Dog SF just says, here's the deuce. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sal Jeezy says, I grew up listening to both of you on 680. Thanks for the content and being a voice of the sports community.
Thank you.
All right. We've gotten to our completion. Now we can get into our Trent and Ralph goodbye.
Well, Larry, I just want to congratulate you on all that you've accomplished. It's been a tremendous run for you over here on YouTube. I mean, personally, I wouldn't draft YouTube because it hasn't torn an ACL yet, but
Trent, you're so funny. I used to tell Tom and I used to tell Tate and all those people at the station, Tony Ryan and all the good people that, Trent Falke, everyone thinks he's a bad guy. He's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. He's not a great guy, but he's a good guy. And I've always said that, Trent. You know how much I have a great respect for you. You never won the Super Bowl here, but it wasn't for lack of trying. You should have had more garlic fries. If you had hung out with me, we could have gone to the Giants games. Trent, I miss you. I wish you weren't in Florida. What do you like about Florida? I like it, but I don't want to wear linen suits. And I told Tom I like Florida, but I don't like wearing linen.
I'm a humidity guy, Ralph, because I also still do a lot of push-ups every day. So if I can show you a little bit of the chest and the humidity and the glistening, I'm into that. I'm not much of a talker. What I want to do is show it to you, and I want to show you a general manager who can do 25 push-ups, maybe even a few of them with one arm. So I like the humidity.
What you showed me was A.J. Jenkins in the first round, Trent. I mean, come on, that's what you showed me. You showed me Gerald Hodges and a bunch of linebackers that couldn't stop the run. I mean, that's the problem. Go Sharks, go Sharks. But I just wanted to say, Trent, if you do come out here in the West Coast, we go to a Sharks game. Maybe go get an Amicis. I really love my Amicis. And maybe some garlic fries. I'll put them in a paper bag.
By the way, do you realize that the Sharks are 5-16-2?
terrible.
5-16-2. They've got 12 points, the fewest amount of points in the NHL. They're a worse team now than they were when they were an expansion team.
I've always loved Sanders Ozolinch. I was a big fan of Jeff Friesen. Owen Nolan is a personal friend. I really felt like the Sharks were me, and I was the Sharks. I loved it. Tate loved it. They put me right on the glass. I used to go all the time.
You want me a better human being or an athlete to talk to ever than Joe Thornton? Big Jumbo is wonderful to me, and Tate, whenever we're there up in Calgary on the glass, we just have a great time. And it's usually Joe who acknowledges us, and I appreciate that acknowledgement.
Great stuff, everybody. Have a great day. Catch Damon at 11. Damon's going to be doing calls. Catch me at 10:45.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe to both channels. Catch both of us. I'll be rapping with Chase Sr. on Niners and Eagles. He covers both. We got that coming up at 10:45. Ike Reese later today.
At 2:15 today on the Plus, we're going to do a Fortenbaugh Friday. It's 49ers and Eagles. We got to bring in Joe, who's an Eagles fan. It's been a while since we've had a Fortenbaugh Friday. His career is just blowing up with ESPN bets rolling out, and we're going to catch up with Joe a little bit later on this afternoon, too. And then, look, post-game and Damon at the 2-minute warning of Eagles 49ers. Larry, you got your post-game show, which after I wrap up mine, I'll hop on with you guys for a little bit if my kids aren't going bonkers and I can get away. And then we're going to be back at it 8 a.m. Monday morning here on 49ers Wake Up. Thanks to everyone for joining us here today. Your loyalty to us means a ton to us, and we thank you for it from the bottom of our hearts.
That's going to do it for us. Thanks to Damon. Thanks to Kev Kruger. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to New York Style Italian Sausage. Thanks to Pig in a Pickle. And, of course, Marin Auto Glass. Damon, you want to shout out some sponsors?
Eat at Ike's. Get yourself a sandwich this weekend at Ike's. You just cannot go wrong. I'm actually wearing this great vintage 49er t-shirt that I got at JacksSF.com. There's a brick and mortar on Chestnut Street called Jack's. They got the best vintage t-shirts you're going to find for Bay Area sports, old teams, defunct teams that don't exist anymore. It's great stuff. Go to JacksSF.com and you can use promo code DamonBruce10 for 10% off your order. And if you're a sports fan, got a lot of sports fans to shop from, you can get all your Christmas shopping done right there for sure. Hughes Orthopedics. Larry, my knee feels 25 years old. I got some plasma treatment in my knee. Dr. Paul Hughes is now my post-game show sponsor. We're going to give you a ton more information over there, but you can avoid invasive surgery with the procedures that he is a specialist in. So if you've got joint pain, that's something for you to consider. And there you go. It's a Friday, so I'm going to tell you, eat at Uncle Boy's. Go get yourself a burger at Uncle Boy's as well. They sponsor the Good for Ball, Bad for Ball, Michael Urban Memorial segment that I do each and every Friday, so I want to give Uncle Boy's a little bit of a shout-out too.
Damon, as a voice of a former Cambiar guy who did Sports Phone, I mean, you always had great ambition, Krug. You get so angry about the Giants. And I used to tell Tom, when I was in the Miata and I'd be listening and I'd say, you know what, Larry's so angry about the Giants. I don't get it. But you know what? As good as you guys were, I was better. I was the original guy from Sports Phone. Don't forget about Ralph. Don't forget about me.
That's great. That was great. Are you still there?
Yep. Hold on. Almost.
Oh, are we still live?
We're still live.
Oh no. I was about to just take my